we're going to be talking about how to use Dux-Soup and the pro versions of it. So to introduce myself, my name's Patrick Collins. I'm responsible for managing the customer service team, running the webinars, and sometimes you can catch me on the turbo calls as well. So my role is to teach all the audience how to use Dux-Soup in the best way and give you a context of how to use LinkedIn in the right way, how to use the Dux-Soup features, and just generate more business in general. I'm also here with Ruta, who's head of customer service for European time zone. And so if you're ever on live chat or emails, it's probably Ruta that you'll be speaking to. So any questions throughout this webinar, if you just ask a question on the chat function, Ruta will be able to help you and answer certain topics. If you can try and keep your questions related to how to use Dux-Soup Pro, features like that, then your questions will help the rest of the audience as well. Any individual sort of tickets or problems, we can deal with that as sort of a customer support problem later on. So I think the first thing to do is there's going to be lots of people on this webinar who are current Dux-Soup customers and some that signed up to Dux-Soup have never used it and others who've never used it before. So I think to get going, it's worth having a quick introduction of what Dux-Soup is. So if you imagine at the moment you're using LinkedIn to build your network, to connect with people, to try and find people who may want to speak to you, may want to use your software, may want to have a meeting with you, things like that. The way Dux-Soup works is that it automates a lot of the processes that you'd usually do manually. Probably the most effective one is automating that first connection message. So if you find your target audience, Dux-Soup can connect with all of these people, up to a couple of hundred people per day, and turn those sort of cold leads into people who actually are connected, part of your network, and want to speak to you. So before we go into Dux-Soup features, I think it's always good to have an introduction on LinkedIn to get a feel for certain things that I would recommend to do before you go live with Dux-Soup. Before I get started, Ruta, is any really quick questions by anybody before you go? Perfect. Okay, so to get going, if you can, what I'll do is I'll open up LinkedIn and you can see my LinkedIn profile. If anybody wants to connect with me, my name is Patrick Collins. You'll find my profile there. Make sure you add a personalized message when you connect with me so I know where you've come from and why you want to connect, really. It's always best practice with anybody, but I only accept connection messages if I know why you want to connect. So a quick thing for LinkedIn, I'm going to really quickly go through this because there's other webinars that cover this. Just try and make sure your profile is looking trustworthy and effective before you go live with connecting. So by this, I mean, make sure you have a profile picture that's professional. So not a cartoon, not a selfie, not wearing sunglasses, not on holiday, just a professional looking picture. Also, try and have a good background image that can show a little bit of context to what you do as a business. So something like a tagline, maybe your logo, and maybe a little bit of branding to get people used to what you're doing. And the most important thing is the tagline. Try and have a tagline that more shows the effect of what you do, not who you are or what you do. So by that, I mean, instead of saying Patrick Collins, founder at Prospect Labs, I would rather say what I do and how I do it. And the reason for this is that when people connect with you or when you try and connect with them, the first thing people want to know is what's the context of why they're connecting. So who are they and how can they influence what I'm doing? So you'll get a much better connection rate if you try and change your tagline to something about what you do and the effect of what you do. So if you want to put your role, that's fine. You could say founder at Prospect Labs, helping startups to generate more leads via LinkedIn and email. That would be fine. But try and make sure it's a bit more interesting. Other bits, summaries, company profiles, I'll leave that to you, but just try and pad it out a lot so that this is the best version of how you look, and recommendations as well. If you think of your profile, it's all about first impressions. How much can you be trusted to connect with and work with you? But I think that's just something very quickly I want to skip through. Something I want to spend a little bit more time on is actually your target audience. And to find your target audience, this is critical because if you have the wrong target audience, Dux-Soup is going to work great, but targeting the wrong people. So we need to find this. So there are a few ways of where you can find your audience. One is, if you think of myself, I want to target marketing people. So if you type in, say, growth hacker or something like that, what you can do is filter by groups. And then you can find sort of groups like this. And then you can join the group. And when you join the group, you'll see the groups like this, and you can see all the people in this group. So one way that you might want to use Dux-Soup is by visiting a group and then just connecting with people in the group. This way, you're not searching for all the job titles and industries. You're just targeting people that all have the same interest. And that interest is that all, in this case, interested in growth hacking. You can do this for all sorts of different topics, and that's a really quick way just to find people to connect with from a group. If you want to be more specific, the other way is to do it like this. So under search here, one second if that loads up. There you go. Under search, if we then search for people, you'll see a list of different filters. So when you click on all filters, here are a few things where I think are standard that you should always have. So one of them is always choose second degree. So first degree are people that you're already connected with and in your network. Third degree you can't filter by on standard LinkedIn anyway, but third degree are people outside of your network. So always choose second degree, which is like a friend of a friend. Locations, try and figure out where you want to target, but I usually say keep it country specific. So I'm going to think of United Kingdom. Current companies or past companies I don't really use because my audience is a lot bigger than one company, but industries is very important. So because I target startups, I would usually choose internet and computer software, but there's lots of different things you can do. If you Google, I think it's LinkedIn developer codes. LinkedIn. Here you go, you'll find this blog, and this blog shows you all the different industries that are linked on LinkedIn. So accounting all the way through apparel, fashion, chemicals, loads of different industries. Half of them I didn't even know were a job. So it's incredible how many different ways you can filter by. A really good exercise is to go through all of these and try and figure out which industries does your business fit in. Because once you know that, you can then go back to the searches and filter by those industries. So if we go back to LinkedIn, I would probably choose internet and computer software. Those are my two, and maybe information technology and services. So the next thing is profile language. I want to target people who are English speaking with English profile because that's the only language I speak. Schools, I'm not too worried about because it's a little bit like companies. You don't need to filter by that. Interests is, again, I don't really filter by that. The main ones, though, are here. First name and last name I won't use, and company at school I don't use. But the main one here is title. And the best way to get a search here is what's called a Boolean search. So if you can do brackets and you can type in founder, space, and then capital O, and then the next person. So maybe CEO. And then space, and then maybe marketing manager. What this does is it lets me filter by all different people. If you use or, it means one or the other. If you use and, it's going to include all of them. And if you include not, it's going to filter them out. So it's a really good way of filtering through all different search terms to see how to find your target audience. If you click apply, you'll then see I've got sort of 13,000 people. So it's a huge audience. You're trying to get the results down to something like 1,500 or 2,000. Because with LinkedIn, you can only ever see the first 100 pages. And I think there's only 10 on each page, or maybe 15. So at maximum, you can only see 1,500. So even though that's a good result, you can only see 1,500. So it's not actually impressive. You want to try and keep this down as much as possible. However, once you've found your target audience and you think these are the people I want to connect with, the next thing is to start looking at Dux-Soup and setting up the options. So before I go through that, are there any quick questions on your LinkedIn profile or your LinkedIn searches that I can help with?
No, there are no questions.
No. Okay, perfect. So if we go into the Dux-Soup options, once you've installed Dux-Soup, so if we go back to the site here, if you click download and try for free, it'll install into a Chrome plugin just like this. And when you click on this, you can go to options, and it comes up like this. And I just want to go through all these features just to explain what happens. The most important ones are this one here, send connection requests. So when you're visiting this target audience, so these here, I want Dux-Soup to visit the profile and send a request, a connection request. I also want it to be personalized, so I'll tick this box. This is the message I would send. Hi, first name, I'm the head of customer service at Dux-Soup, and it'd be great to connect to learn more about your company, Patrick. If you can see here, there's lots of merge tags of what you can do to connect with people in the right way. So by the first name, middle, last name, company, industry. I think one thing to be wary of, if you choose company name, sometimes people will have things like Prospect Labs Limited, Dux-Soup Limited, and it looks a bit similar if you say, I'm the head of customer service at Dux-Soup and I would like to connect with your company, and it's not filtered in the right way. So I'd probably recommend the best merge tags are first name. That's the one that makes the message seem personalized and works quite well. The other thing as well is the best results we see are when people connect that it's trying to be a first impression, trying to get a relationship going with somebody. So what I mean by this is that you're not looking to build a lead, you're not looking to sell your services, you're not even looking to introduce your business. All you're trying to do here is to say, I think we've got some things in common. Could we connect and see if we can learn from each other? That's basically it. So try and keep the connection message all about you as a person and your interests, not the company. I think that comes a little bit later once you're connected. So having these two features switched on are going to be very powerful for the automation. A few of the other things. If you imagine once all of these people are connected, by the end of the month, you might have maybe 1,000 extra connections. What you might want to do is switch this off and instead switch this on. So what this means is that you can send a personalized message to all your first degree connections. So if we look on here, this is all connections, but what we can do is on LinkedIn, you can filter by anybody that's your first degree. So if we have a look again here where we search for people. Now this time we would filter by first degree connections, and you might say United Kingdom, and again, anybody that's a founder. There you go. So this will show anybody who's a founder, and now I can run a first degree campaign to message all of these. Now, one of the benefits of this is, do you see how you can have up to 2,000 characters? If it's a connection message, it's only 300. So sometimes what people will do is send a connection message, connect with their audience, and then once a month, once every couple of months, they'll send a personalized campaign to all of their connections. That's a little bit further. So a good context of this is if you're launching a new website, you might want to target all your connections to say the new site's live, do you need some help? Or you're looking to hire somebody, or you've written a blog post that you want your audience to know about. So this can be a really great feature just to connect with people that are already part of your network. However, I would leave this on to get new connections. Next things here, send in-mails to second and third degree connections. If you've paid for in-mail credits, you can use this feature. A lot of times I would say it's not too suitable because you want to connect with people more than pay to be in their inbox. But if you want to, you can switch that on, and then you can create the sections here to automate in-mails. I think this is more likely that people in the recruitment section would use this, but it depends. But if you've got paid in-mails, why not use that feature? Okay, next one. I think these are a lot of the features for if you want to tidy up your profiles. So this one here, disconnect a profile from your network using standard LinkedIn. So the way this would work is if you switch that on and filtered by all your first degree connections, it would go through these one by one and disconnecting, so removing them as a connection. So this is a really good feature when you have too many connections and you want to tidy up things a little bit. What's important though is you wouldn't have these both switched on. You just have this one switched on. So whenever you set these, it's either this one, or it's either this one, or it's this one, but it's never all at the same time. But that's a really strong feature if you want to automate just tidying up your audience. So an example might be you connect with lots of startup founders for about a year, and then you change jobs and realize that none of these people are relevant to your LinkedIn profile. You could filter by founders, first degree, tick this on, and then remove all of them from your account. Next one here, save any profile as a lead. This is quite good if you're targeting a certain audience and you want to save them in Sales Navigator. However, I don't recommend this too much because I think you can tag profiles instead on Dux-Soup, which is a bit more powerful. So I would say if you want to save as leads, it's good, but I don't recommend that too much. This one I don't use too much, so I think you can ignore. This one's quite a cool feature, endorse. So what you can do here is every time you visit a profile, it'll click on the profile and endorse one of their skills. This is quite a nice feature for if you imagine trying to break the ice. So you connect with somebody, but you also endorse for business development or sales or something like that. So a lot of people like to do this in tandem with connection messages, just to be able to break the ice a little bit and just to do a nice thing for somebody before you become connections. Next one here, tag profiles. What you can do on Dux-Soup is filter very easily by your tags. And so if you look on any profile, so we'll just click on one here. Whenever any profile loads up, what you can see on the right-hand side is an option where Dux-Soup can tag the profile. So here you go, you can add tags. So if you imagine when Dux-Soup is automatically visiting all these profiles, it can add a tag here. So in the context, you might search for any founders, and then you want to be able to filter by them in the future. So you could tag by founder and press enter, and then filter. What this will do is every time it views your target audience, tags them as founder. Now this is a cool feature in the future, because you can go into Dux-Soup and you can filter by search by tag. So in the future, you could say anybody that's a founder, I could filter by. And so there's no profiles yet. However, when you've added these as you search, you'll be able to filter all the people that were tagged as founder. So a lot of people like to use this tag feature for trying to organize either the stage that they're connecting with, or the job title, or the country, or something like that. But my recommendation for this is, if you are going to use it, be very organized from the start, because otherwise things can get very messy. So create some sort of formula for how you want to do this, and then stick with this. Final one here. Run automated actions while manually browsing profiles. You don't need to do this yet, but what we'll do is, if you switch this on, if you manually look at a LinkedIn profile, it'll automatically send a connection message because you have this switched on. So instead of the Dux-Soup bot running in the background, you're looking at visiting profiles, but the actions are still going to run. So I'd always say leave this off for the moment, unless you're maybe using Turbo and there's some features you need to do. But for the moment, I would say if you get these options right, it should look a little bit like this. So for connecting, always look like this. If it's for first degree, it should look like this with the message, obviously. If you're sending in-mails, it should be this one. And if you're trying to get rid of connections, I would use this one here. But the context of what I'm going to show you today, I would say have this one switched off. We'll maybe endorse, and we'll also tag profiles. Final thing is name scrubber. A lot of people have really annoying things on the profile, stars, hashtags, different things. And so what Dux-Soup does is automatically tidies them up and filters through them. So it is a good way of tidying up all the profiles. This is relevant if you want to export all of your visited profiles in the future, which I'll show you in a little bit how to do that. But so far, this is all of the actions. And if you get this right, basically you're given instructions to the Dux-Soup bot of what you want to do. So getting these right, then viewing the target audience and pressing connect will start to work. However, before we get going, there's also the skipping feature. So before I move on to this, is there any questions, Ruta, that I can help with so far?
There's a question. One from Tom Kelly. Once a connection has accepted, can you send a automated follow-up message?
Yeah, so Tom, that's possible. Not in the Pro version. If you want an automated follow-up, that would be in the Turbo version, which is this version here. So this has a 1-week free trial, and this is all done via the software called Zapier. So the way it works is Dux-Soup will pull information from LinkedIn to Zapier. Zapier is where you set up an automated follow-up, and then there's a tool called Dux-Soup Remote Control. So in the options, if you're signed up at the moment, and if you go to connect, these are the features here that do all the automated follow-ups. So there's a few other blogs about that, but it's not covered in the Pro version. That's in the Turbo version.
Another question from Emmanuel. Can you filter your list of first-degree contacts to send a message only to some of them?
Yeah, so of course you can. When you say only to some of them, it just means the criteria of what do you mean by some. So for example, you could filter by as much as you can here. So they could be first degree, only United Kingdom, and only people that are founder or CEO. So I think it's up to how filtered you want to be for the title or the connections or the locations. If you're using Sales Navigator, you can be a little bit more specific in terms of how you filter them. But basically, whatever the results are that come up, this is what Dux-Soup is going to look at. So my recommendation would be work really hard on this to find the right target audience, and then switch Dux-Soup on to connect with them or message them. Okay, anything else, Rita?
A few more. From Christian. Does LinkedIn limit the number of search results monthly, free version?
Yes, so the pricing is usually on a free version of LinkedIn. It's around about 1,500 visited profiles per month. So that means that if you visited too many profiles, on the search criteria, you'll probably see the first 2 or 3 and then a message below that will say you've reached your commercial limit. Don't worry about this. It's not something that's saying your LinkedIn account is flagged or broken. This is more just saying you've run out of profiles that you can visit. There are a few ways in which you can get around this. So one of them is you can just pay, and then that means you're upgraded to Sales Navigator, which I would recommend. I wouldn't recommend professional or business because it's just the same version of LinkedIn, but just more search terms. Sales Navigator is much more powerful, and you can visit up to 1,500 profiles per day instead of per month. However, there's another way around this. If you go to software called Recruiting, I think it's this one. Here we go. This software here, you can do the same sorts of search titles. So you can search for founder or co-founder. You can say in United Kingdom, and keywords to include, you might say startup, something like that. And then you can say find the people on LinkedIn. And instead of opening on LinkedIn, you can say open in Google. Now, what's really cool about this is because this shows all of the search criteria, if I just quickly switch Dux-Soup on here, Dux-Soup can now filter by all the people. Sorry, I'll switch that on. There we go. Dux-Soup can now connect with all these people from the Google search. So if you ever have a problem with reaching your commercial limit on LinkedIn, if you can find your audience via Google, then you can start connecting with all these people, which means it opens you up to another 1,000 people you can connect with. So if you don't want to pay for LinkedIn, I would say use this tool here called recruiting.net. This helps you find your target audience on Google. And then once you have your target audience, you can then use Dux-Soup to visit all the profiles and connect, things like that. So that's one good way. If you don't use that, then my advice would be upgrade to Sales Navigator, and the first month you can get is a free trial. But if you're serious about really pushing this automation, things are going to take off quickly. The number of profiles you visit, the number of connections, the number of conversations, the number of searches. So my advice would be commit to Sales Navigator, because the money you would make in sales from this, it works out well. Okay, any other questions, Rita?
Yes, one more. Could you send a message to contacts who never received any messages from them?
Yeah, so it's a few ways, and it's good to have the terminology here. So a message, you can only message somebody if you're connected. So if you see this person here's first degree, I can message and say, hey, Matt, how you doing? However, if it's a second degree, I can't message, I can only connect. So if your question is, can you message people who you haven't messaged before? I think that's very difficult because there's no way to filter on LinkedIn who you've messaged and who you haven't. So unfortunately, I don't think there's a way of filtering that. But what you can do is filter by the searches, and anybody who has a connect button or second degree, you can try and connect with again. So there may be a target audience you've tried to connect with and they didn't accept, so you can always try and connect again. But there's no way at the moment where you can filter by people who you've messaged with but haven't responded. That's on the basic version. On the Dux-Soup Pro version, though, on the Turbo version, what you can do is set up all the automated messages. And what Dux-Soup will do is as soon as somebody accepts the connection or as soon as somebody replies, the automation stops. So to answer your question, you can't do it with the Pro version, but with the Turbo version in the future, what you can do is set up all the automation, and as soon as somebody replies to you, then the automation stops, which would help you. But at the moment, it's not suitable to just do it manually or on the Pro version. Anything else, Rita?
No, that's
No.
it. Thank you.
Cool. Okay, so we've got actions. Now let's look at skipping. So the context of skipping is you want to make the search criteria as relevant as possible. So I would say skip if outside of your network. This means that if they're not a friend of a friend or part of a connection, I don't want to connect with them. Premium subscriber or influencer, job seeker, I don't think these are relevant at the moment. However, if you're in recruitment, you might say skip if not a job seeker, because that's all you're looking for. Sometimes you can link to Salesforce as well, and then you can say skip if they're not, if they're part of Salesforce, which could be really helpful. The other one, though, I usually use this one, is skip if the profile photo is blank. So we go back to the search. This person, Andrew Michael, or this person, Alex or Nabina, if they've got no profile, I would be skeptical to say how active are they on LinkedIn, because if they're not bothered about how they look and how they perceive, I don't think they'll be that responsive to reacting on LinkedIn. So one of the options here, I would always say skip the profile if the profile photo is blank. The other thing is, if you remember here, you can tag lots of people as founder. What you can do here is skip profiles of people that are tagged as something. So for example, I could actually, for this one, on Andrew, I could tag as customer, which means that he's currently working with me. So I'll just do that now. Then what it means is that on here, I can say skip profiles tagged as customer. Perfect. So this means that any profiles are going to view, if they have a certain tag, it's just going to skip them. So it avoids me trying to connect or message people that maybe I'm already working with or competitors or something like that. Final few, skip profiles and match pattern. This gets a lot more technical, and to be honest, even still trying to figure it out. So it's a bit that Will built that we're still sort of making better. It's basically matching the pattern of how the profile looks or how the job title looks, but it's a bit too difficult to explain at the moment. The final one, though, history skipper. What you want to do is not be looking at somebody's profile all the time, because when you look at somebody's profile, they get an alert to say somebody is visited. So an example is if you have a look at my notifications, I can see here the people that have been looking at my profile. So I don't know if we scroll down. Yeah, you can so see congratulate or different people. Sometimes you get updates saying people are looking at your profiles. So what you can do here is to say skip profiles visited in the past 31 days. Means if you've already manually or via Dux-Soup visited it, this tool will skip it to make sure that you're not looking at it again. So I would say these features here, if you keep this like this one's obviously, but these two, keep it like this, you'll do very well. Okay, any quick questions on that, Rita, or I'll go to the next stage?
There are a few questions about Turbo, so...
Okay, I'll do these, then come back to Turbo at the end. Cool. Okay, so next thing is throttling. So this means the speed of which you want Dux-Soup to work. Now, when you sign up, there's some preset settings, but my advice would be go as slow as possible and gradually speed up. So try and look at this robot as a person that you're training to get better and better all the time. You never give an employee everything to do straight away. You train them on little bits, get them faster until they're ready to go full speed. It's the same with this. So visiting profiles, I would say slower. And scanning profiles, slow. And then I'd say pause for 5 minutes after every probably 50 visits. So what you're trying to do here is to say to the Dux-Soup bot, when it's visiting profiles, you want it to go very slow and to replicate human behavior. This is important because you don't want to be flagged from LinkedIn too aggressive and too active. So by having these settings, it means that things are slow, steady, really high quality, and your account won't be flagged. With the daily limits, I think it's up to you what you want to do. With free LinkedIn, we recommend up to 100 visits per day, and I think that's fine. With connection requests, I would always say up to probably 50 per day, and direct messages no more than, say, 100 per day. I think this is really safe standards. A lot of people will be a bit more aggressive than this, but my goal isn't to get hundreds of leads and then crash the account. It's to get maybe 3 to 5 leads per day, every day for a couple of years. So trying to get that right is important. Final thing is, if you click apply random, it'll just keep changing the different results that'll do. I don't like this because I really like to be in control of my marketing efforts, but you might want to apply random so that you have more variability of how things work. Final thing is snooze the robot. What this will do is once you hit your limit, so imagine I have up to 100 profile visits. When this icon shows 100, Dux-Soup will stop, and that means it won't do anything else of these behaviors until the next day. So it's a really good way to keep that ticked on to make sure that nothing goes too aggressive. So those all in throttling will mean that if you have these settings, you have the right benchmark, and then if you upgrade to Sales Navigator, you might change that up to 500 a day, and you might change this up to maybe 200 per day. But even when I'm on Sales Navigator, I still tend to have these settings because it keeps things safe, and I'm happy with that. Okay, next things, Connect. So a lot of people have been asking about Turbo, and this is where if you have a Turbo account, you can switch these things on. So what questions do you have about that, Trude?
We have one saying just starting with Dux-Soup, but aren't tags also very handy for different follow-up lists in a CRM?
Yeah, it depends. I've seen some people get into such a sort of complicated system where they tag connected and then tag responded and then follow up and then interested. So trying to tag of every stage of your CRM, which I don't necessarily think is the best way to go, because if you commit to that, you've got so much work just to keep things tidy. And if you think about LinkedIn on connecting, you can connect with so many people that you want to try and reduce the admin. So what I would recommend is with Turbo, what you can do is you can create webhook. So every time you connect with somebody, or every time somebody replies, or whatever you want to do, you can then push them to your sales CRM to create a contact. And then using Message Bridge, every time that person replies to your messages, these messages will be updated on your sales CRM. So instead of having lots of tags, you can use these two to sync with your sales CRM. And that makes it a lot better in terms of completely automated instead of manually tagging things all the time.
One quick question about Turbo.
Yeah.
Can you have more than one follow-up message?
Yeah. So if you're using Turbo, I would say probably schedule something like 6 follow-up messages. So connection message is done via Dux-Soup. So the connection message is this one here. But then the follow-up message will be done via Zapier. And the follow-up message, I would say, is a follow-up message when somebody connects, just to say thanks for connecting. Then I would add a delay for, say, 5 days. And then another message saying, I've had a look at your website. I've got some blogs to help you. Hope you find it interesting. And then maybe have a message once a week for, say, 5 weeks or 6 weeks, all with different resources or different points to speak to the customer. Now, what Dux-Soup will do is as soon as that person replies, Dux-Soup filters that out and stops any more automation. So that's why I say set up a lot of automated messages, because as soon as they reply, it will stop. But if they don't reply, then Dux-Soup's working in the background trying to create these connections, which I think is a really good way to automate the process. One thing about that is don't spam people, though. Try and be wary that if you got 6 messages of somebody in too short a time that are too pushy, you just wouldn't like the person. So always trying to give more than you take. So give blog content, give advice, give feedback, give your time. And what comes back is people wanting to work with you. Okay, anything else, Rita?
One more. Does LinkedIn Recruiter act as Sales Navigator?
No, so they're 2 completely different things. So in this sort of hierarchy of LinkedIn, you have basic LinkedIn, which is free, and then you have LinkedIn Pro, and then LinkedIn Business. And then you have a different product, which is Sales Navigator, and a different product, which is Recruiter. So unless you're working in the recruitment space, you don't need Recruiter at all. It's a cool tool, but it's all about finding people to target for jobs. The best tool, I would say, is Sales Navigator, because that tool is built for trying to generate more leads and trying to keep you organized to find your target audience. And Sales Navigator is better than basic LinkedIn because you can filter by things like size of company, company revenue, software that the companies use, filter by company or filter by contact. There's loads of great filters that you can do that aren't in the basic LinkedIn. Okay, any other questions, Rita?
No.
Cool. So final few options about Dux-Soup. You have Planner. So Planner, what you can do is it's set as random. So what this will do is as long as your browser's open, Dux-Soup will open up in the background at random times here, connect with people, and then close. So this is a good way if you want things just running in the background. So if you're running a marketing or lead generation agency and you've got a number of different clients, I would recommend setting up something like this. You might not want to have it in the middle of the night, but you might have something that looks a little bit like this. So throughout the day, Dux-Soup will just open up, connect with these people, and then close again. Remember, Dux-Soup can only work on one browser at a time. So if you've got an agency account and you've got lots of clients, I recommend that you have something like this, where you have different profiles for different clients. And in that way, Dux-Soup can be running in the background for each client that has a browser. But this is the feature here. I would say clear for the moment, because I personally like to switch Dux-Soup on and off when I want to use it, instead of sort of running when it wants to. But that's how you can do it, either random, or you can just set the ones that you want to do. Okay, next few bits, user, that's just some different bits of information here if you want to share. If there's ever a bug, if you click reload, that will usually fix the bug of the new version before you want to get in touch with us. And then final thing is browser. On the display, I always say today's visit count. That means that on here, I can glance at Dux-Soup and just see how many profiles I've visited, how many different things I've done on Dux-Soup. And that's basically it. So if we close these features and close these, what I then do is think, okay, so we've found our target audience. I'll open up Dux-Soup and make sure this is switched on. I'll quickly check the connection message, which looks good. And I'll quickly check the options to make sure everything is switched on how I want it. Yeah, okay, so that's looking good. So then the final thing is I would click visit and connect, and there you go, and it's going to start running. And so see how it's skipped Andrew's profile because there's no thumbnail. And then it's going to look at Sabrine's profile, open up the profile, click on connect, send the connection message, tag, endorse, and then close. And this is where Dux-Soup starts to become really efficient, because now this is running, I can start focusing on other sides of the business, on responding to emails, responding to LinkedIn, different things. If you see here, when you try and click, you can't press anything here because it's running. But if I open up LinkedIn here, what I can do is then start to use LinkedIn. So I can start to reply to messages, I can check network, I can do different things. I can check whatever I want to do. So as long as you don't close that browser and it's running, things are just happening in the background. So thanks, Angelo. Nice to meet you, and looking at the webinar now. So that's where I say this is now running, and you can see it happening here. If you ever need to stop anything, if you just click stop robot, or you can just refresh if you're panicking at all, and that will just stop everything. So I think that's a full search in terms of some bits of information on your LinkedIn profile, getting the Dux-Soup options right. And I think the most important thing is making sure you have these ones switched on to the right ones. Make sure you're skipping the right profiles, and make sure you're going at the correct speed. If you get that right with the right message, you should see a huge amount of people connecting with you every day. And these people, once they're connected, it's then over to you to manually speak to them. If you're thinking about using Turbo, what you can then do is have automated messages to manually follow up with people, and then to manually, an automated follow-up message maybe a week later. And then as soon as they reply, that's where you manually take over and start speaking to your leads. So I hope that it's helped you so far. Rita, is any final questions?
No, that's it.
All good? Brilliant. So thanks for all your time. Remember, if you want to connect with me at all, my name is Patrick Collins. Look forward to hearing from you, keeping in touch. And thanks for your time today. Take care.